Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Xner's Fireside Chats. I do have a guest on for this episode. It's the one and only Evangelist or Evangelist. I don't know what I was saying there. Yeah, there we go. And yeah, I'm glad to have you on there, Mike. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm happy to be. As I was saying before we went live, it's funny to be on the other end of one of these. Usually, I'm the guy in your position hitting other people up to come chat. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to not having to script this one. That's
Yeah.
it's a fun experience. Other people's podcasts.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I do all of the scripting there. But yeah, I know you have a puppy behind you. How's that going as well? Because
Great. He's crashed out right now. He's about a year. Yeah, you just got a dog, right?
Yeah. I did. Yeah, he's like, I think around 4 months now, but he is the best thing ever. He's biting my hands off right now, but it's all worth it.
I mean, yeah, 4 months is puppy.
Yeah.
Noodle's a year. I got him, so he's adopted, so age is a little bit of an estimation, but they estimated him beginning of the year.
Okay.
Based on dental and teeth and all that. So
Yeah.
he's about a year old. So he's a little more reasonable than a 4-month-old puppy, but
Yeah.
I've done that before as well, and it is genuinely like taking care of a baby, but it's a delight, man.
Oh yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still like trying to get rid of the bite marks on my hands right now, but yeah. All right, so we're gonna start off with a quick like rapid fire questions because I want to quickly go over some of your favorites, some of your maybe least favorites, but I want to talk about first off your favorite in a lineup of all time or team, whatever it may be.
Of all time. Ooh, favorite NA lineup of all time. That's a good question. Does it have to be favorite because it was good or favorite just because I liked it a lot?
You can like the players, you could do whatever.
All right, there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and say that I really loved the Singularity project.
Okay.
The Singularity team back when and 2 iterations of it, right? I liked the version with Vanity and Food. That was a lot of fun. And then I liked the next go around with OC and Floppy coming into the lineup where it was it was Shake and Floppy came into the lineup. I'm trying to remember the order of who added when, but the last iteration really where it was Floppy, OC, Shake, Hydrex, and who is now Cam, and I think even was Cam at that time, and Ryan. That was a great team. That was a lot of fun. They stumbled at the last hurdle where they would have been in Pro League and what could have been, but they did stumble, and that eventually became then Floppy and OC went to the ATK team that then became Cloud9. So sure, we'll go with that. There are a lot of NA rosters that I have loved over the years. Understandably in my role as an NICS evangelist, but that sure, I'll throw myself behind that one as one of my favorites of all time.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, favorite LAN event you've covered now?
See, that's kind of a weird one, right? Because there's been 2 years where I haven't covered. Well, I did the last Fragadelphia, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, I haven't covered a LAN event, a proper LAN event. Like the IEM fall stuff was all online. So that wasn't a LAN, but even though we were in studio. So it's been a long time. Favorite LAN event period. It's got to be one of the global challenges, probably. You know what? No, it's the ESEA Rank S Combine.
Okay.
It's the weirdest event. It was this crazy little event. This was in, I think, 2019.
2019, yeah.
Yeah, spring of 2019. The idea behind the event, for anyone who's not familiar, is Rank S is still the top of the PUG system in the ESEA, but it used to be a much bigger deal because there were money prize pools for it and so on and so forth. And the way this LAN worked is over the course of a year, everyone who placed, I think it was top 2 in Rank S and maybe top 2 or top 1 in Rank G in a month got an invite to this event. And that's in both NA and Europe.
Okay.
And they win as individuals. You had to be 21 because the event was in Vegas and there was a lot of alcohol available and it was a great time. And then the ESEA brought in 4 legendary players to draft teams. It was Sean Garris, it was Nothing, it was Hazed, and it was Skadoodle, Ska.
Okay.
Whose team actually I think won it. Skadoodles did. And they drafted teams from among those players and made PUG teams and played out a tournament, and it was awesome, and it took place over a weekend. It was a really fun event. It was sponsored. We were in the MGM Grand in these giant suites overlooking the city of Las Vegas. It was the most incredible setting. One suite was where all the events and stuff took place. One suite was the players lounge green room, where there was just free-flowing Chipotle and whatever you could possibly want in life. Chipotle was a sponsor of the event, so I ate so much Chipotle that weekend. And that was genuinely one of the most fun events I've ever been a part of. It was just from the perspective of broadcast talent. The games that we did do, even though they were not the highest standard of Counter-Strike because they were pugs, were very goofy and fun. The broadcast was very fun. We could be very freewheeling, and frankly, there just wasn't that much work to like play time as well. Part of the idea behind the event, I think, was for ESEA to show their appreciation to the people who are a member of their pug ecosystem as well. So it was a really good time. Players were there from all over the world. They were having a really good time with it. Everybody was basically having a play the game, but also kind of vacation thing. And that's where like fun offshoots of that event. That's probably the event that got Crashies back into competing, because he played at that event. Then he joined Riot Squad, came back to Team CS. He had been done with Team CS for like a year at that point, and decided to come back to competing. Now he's a top Valorant player, which I don't know if he would have been on that trajectory without an event like the Rank S Combine to kick him back in, because he was a god there. He was on Ska's team. They won the event. He was secondary opping with Skadoodle and out opping Skadoodle on his own team, which is where I was like, oh yeah, this dude bangs. Yeah. This dude bangs in a big way. There was a lot. I have a soft spot in my heart for every player who attended that event. And like I think like everyone who attended that event generally does. Like it was just a really fun time and a really weird but beautiful event that then didn't happen again. And I know Pietro, who was the sort of architect of this event and still works for ESL, would love to make another one. So this is my vote that the Rank S Combine needs to come back, because that event was awesome.
There we go. I think I know your answer to this one, but favorite online event that you've covered?
I mean, it's got to be the IEM Fall that I just did.
Yeah.
Although, if we're talking, so that I was in studio, right? I'm going to say true online.
True online where you're at home?
True online where I was home was Katowice. Doing Katowice as the BC stream with Dean.
Yeah.
What was that? Beginning of 2020?
2021, wasn't it?
Was it 2021? My sense of time is all fucked up.
I don't know. I don't know if you did the 2021 or the 2021 one, which was like
a weird
name. I think they changed the name to like the Masters or something.
Hold on.
Wikipedia
will answer my questions.
My sense of like
my sense of when things happened is so fucked up. It's actually wild.
Well, during COVID. I think it was the World Championship, but
yes, it was the World Championship. So it was 2021 that I did that with Dean. And that was just awesome because, we're doing, I mean, that was, because that was the B and the C stream, it was less prestigious in my eyes than when I was, obviously in studio working for ESL. But the games we were covering, it was, that was like Yakindar's coming out party as part of Virtus Pro, where he was really amazing. That was Gambit making their case to be the best in the world. That was Junior's first event with Furia. Obviously that didn't go well, but it was still fun to watch. Like that was a really dope event, and we got to see a bunch of really good matches and talk to the players and things like that. So I'm gonna say that was my favorite online event, because it gets weird with the studio, right? Where I think the studio event
was like 3 levels now.
Yeah. Doing IEM Fall was incredible, and I love that, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity, and I love doing the coaching, or not the coaching, the hosting, and doing all that. But I think it was Katowice as well, because that was also an event where after a year of COVID, I was pretty down in the dumps about career and things in general, because shit had dried up in a big way. I had I thought my career was going to die because I did something stupid. I didn't think it was going to be because the world went into an apocalypse.
Out of that year.
That year I legit thought I was going to be done and having to take a job somewhere else because my funds were drying up. Right. And Katowice was the first event where it was like, holy shit, this is something that's bigger than anything I've done before. This is legitimate career progression. Like, I can still make something of this. So that was really exciting. And there were a few others. Like we did like a day of Cologne that previous year as fill-ins. We did
with the day that they paused, or I think they took a break for BLM, right?
Maybe it was. I know the Aussie guys weren't available for like one day, and so we did the B stream of Cologne.
Yeah.
And that was pretty dope because it's Cologne. And then we did online for ESL New York that year as well, which was we did the CIS online for whatever reason, but it was also sick.
Yeah.
But I do remember Katowice as being like the big thing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now I want to talk about your favorite place that you've traveled for commentary. So, like, where was your best spot?
For commentary, okay. Best spot. I like Dallas a lot, and we did that a lot because it was global challenges were always in Dallas. So that was fun, and we sort of got some familiarity with the city and had spots that we could go back to and things like that. And that's the first place, I think, where, apart from Philly, where, I live and have lived for the last almost 3 years now, and lived previously before that. It's the first place where like I regularly went to. Vegas was pretty cool again, but that was more about the event than it was about Vegas. I'm not that big into gambling or anything like that, so it's not. I suspect Vegas is now my kind of town if I spent a whole lot more time there, but it was fun as the event. And obviously going to Katowice this last time and doing 2 weeks in Katowice is less about Katowice as a place, although I did like the town. People talk a lot of shit about Katowice.
Yeah.
And I had really low expectations coming in because a bunch of other towns were like, yeah, it's kind of a shit town. Like, there's not that much to do there. It's a cute little town. Like, I probably wouldn't want to live there, but I enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing where not a lot of good things about Katowice, but that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd want to move there, but spend 2 weeks? Hell yeah. I had a good time. We and the great thing about Poland is the cost of living is dirt cheap.
Yeah.
So like Hawk and I were just going out after broadcasts every night, and like we just wander around and get dinner. And there was one time where we had gotten a list of recommendations from our hair and makeup person.
Yeah.
And she'd like given us a whole bunch of recommendations, and we were going through the list and everything was closed because it was late. Everything was closing like as we got there, and we finally got to like the last one on the list, and it was way nicer than we would normally have gone to.
Right.
But we sat down, had a nice dinner, couple of drinks, whole thing, and I'm like, I'll pick up the check. It's the equivalent of like $29.
That's not bad.
Great.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Whole meal.
Yeah, you'll take that any day. I mean, that's the one thing I heard was that everything closes super early, so once you get off, like, there's nothing to do too crazy. But yeah, I mean, that's good. Philly's the same way, though, to be fair, in my experience.
You guys tried it on a Sunday. Okay, so context on this. Sunday night after Philadelphia wraps up, which, by the way, it wrapped up at like 11, I want to say. It was pretty late. It's a fucking Sunday in September. Like, no one's going to be going out because that's a weird-ass time to go out.
True.
And so then you guys are like, well, where should we go in Philly? And I give you a few recommendations. And I think you didn't go to the ones I recommended. Because there was one that would have been open that I don't think you guys went to. I don't know where you wound up going.
I was with a whole different group, but I know the story, and that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. You weren't with that group. Okay. Mm-hmm. This was like Note, Jeff, and it was Bad News Bears and that whole crew who like asked me for recommendations and then tried to go out. Spent ages like going back and forth. By the time they actually got somewhere, it was definitely past midnight on a Sunday, which is just like, so they wound up going to like a Dave & Buster's or a casino or some dumb shit, which like, fine, it'll be fine. But no one, people do not go out super late on Sundays in Philadelphia. It is not a city that never sleeps. It's not that. There's a lot to do, but Philly is not a city that never sleeps. It's not New York.
Yeah. All right. So now we can kick things off with the actual questions I got for you all. Okay. So I actually want to talk about how you started as a caster, because there's a lot of ways that you can kind of start. You can pick up advanced games or main if you were starting way back when. So how exactly did you like kick off your casting career, and kind of what appealed you to commentary?
I mean, I did start way back before Advanced exists.
Okay.
By the way, Advanced should be named the Jimmy Nerfed McFadden Memorial Division. Not Memorial because he's fine. He's fine. He's not dead. Shouldn't have said a Memorial Division, but he did basically invent the division.
Okay.
Which I can tell that story too, but it's not. I'll just tell that story since I've dived into it. Basically, he is, to my understanding, a systems consultant in that he gets hired by companies. I don't know if he still is, but he was at the time. He gets hired by companies to basically look at the way their systems work and suggest ways to make them more efficient and effective. And so he was a CS player, and he looked at main and how saturated main had been and the skill jump between main and premier, and said there really should be a division between them. And he provided this massive statistical analysis, like a whole document that he just put out there because he's like, this is a problem, it should be fixed, and outlined all the reasons it should be and what size it should be and all this stuff. And then like 3 months later, ESEA just introduced advanced, and it was pretty much as outlined in that document. And I don't think they ever acknowledged the fact that the nerf document, but it was pretty clearly inspired. So so when I got my start, here's how I started. I had started watching CS in, I don't know, 2013, 2014. I had no CS background before that. I'd played 1.6 in like a LAN cafe a couple of times, but I didn't really know anything about CS. And I was at a very bad time in my life, tumultuous time in my life. I was dealing with depression and anxiety and figuring out how to deal with that, and dropping out of school, and dealing with that. And so CS became like sort of an escape. I played, yes, and also watched. And it became something of an escape. It's something that was, that I enjoyed. But as far as commentary, when I was watching tournaments, I had that idea that, hey, this is something that maybe I'd like to try. I bet I could be good at it. I've always had the gift of the gab. I'm a born bullshitter, to be quite frank. So there was always that thought, but I had no idea how to approach it. Didn't know anything about esports or the pro scene or any of that. But what happened was, I was living in Annapolis, and I was between jobs. I had a job that I had just gotten, but I wasn't starting for a couple of weeks. And so I was on Reddit, that wonderful, terrible place, on the Global Offensive subreddit, and I saw a post about a LAN in Philly, Fragadelphia. At the time, it was Fragadelphia 10, Freezadelphia for those who were there. Fragadelphia 10, there was just a post that had been posted by Rob, who basically outlined what the event was like, come watch, come be a spectator, come compete, all this different stuff. And there was like a little subnote in a paragraph. It was like, if you're in person, we'll do caster tryouts, And I saw that and thought, well, there's an idea. And so I sent a message in the either a DM or a comment on Reddit, and I said, can you tell me a little bit more about the caster tryouts? And he said, yeah, basically, if you come, we'll throw you on the mic on the B stream if you want, and if you don't suck, you can stay there, and if you do, we'll take you off. And I thought, all right, well, this could be interesting, and I don't have anything to do this weekend, and a bunch of my friends are in Philly. I had gone to school in Philly and dropped out. There was a whole bunch in Philly, so I was like, all right, I'll go up to Philly for the weekend, see a bunch of friends, see people, and go check this out. And so I walked into that. Frag was held in 2 locations. It was held in localhost, which most old Frag people will remember. That was where the pit was. That's like where Fragadelphia started. That's where Nerd Street started. And then down the street, there was this warehouse where they had, and per my understanding of what I've heard later, like the owner had been like, yeah, use it for this event. Like, it'll be great, blah, 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 blah. Neglected to mention that there was no HVAC system in the unit. So it was a particularly cold January in Philadelphia. There was snow on the ground, and this warehouse had no heat. So it's known as Freezadelphia now. People were wearing winter coats on stage. We're giving out the PCs. Hand warmers for free. Yeah, those PCs weren't doing shit. It was that cold. People were literally like putting hand warmers in their headphones to keep their heads warm, and like lining of your hat and like in your gloves. It was nuts. So I showed up to that event, and I said, I went to the door, and I don't know who was checking tickets or for like spectators and that kind of thing. It was probably Kyle or somebody. And I said, hey, I'm here to try out to be a caster. I think first I paid the spectator fee or whatever and just sat there for a little while and watched. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I had no clue what was going on. So they told me to go to the other building, to localhost, which was warm and nice that way. And they put me on the microphone. And the first game I ever cast, I came in halfway through a game and sat down with Mark, with Bach.
Okay.
And did a little bit of casting with him. And then I cast with MCE, who was at the time thinking about doing full-time broadcast work as opposed to competition. He was a player at the time who was thinking about transitioning into broadcast work. It's the scene's loss that he didn't, because he would have been great at it. He is great at it. And then with a guy named Holden, who is not in esports anymore, but used to run broadcasts for ESEA, like was in charge of all those broadcasts for ESEA. And then like a year after this, decided he was out of esports, got a job. And as far as I know, just has a life at this point and really doesn't come back in at all. But he's a great guy. And so I did like 2.5 games at Frag, and I really enjoyed it. And I got a lot of nice feedback. I was chatting with people and they were saying, you clearly have more game knowledge than we would expect for this, and like you're doing all right. Here's like some things to work on, give me some advice. And they told me to go talk to Rob, who was at the time the producer for pretty much all things Philadelphia. So I chatted with Rob, and he basically said, we do these local events sometimes, the 0.5s, come back for one of those, put me in contact with it. So I left that. And then I wound up coming back for some of the 0.5 lands, coming back to Locals, where there were just like, 8 local teams kind of thing, smaller events. And I started doing more and more. And then they brought me to GexCon that summer, which was the first time I got paid theoretically. It was some tiny, tiny amount of money.
Yeah.
Like tiny amount of money. And then the fun thing was at that event, after that event, I had a wreck and totaled my car. So all that money was long since gone. But that's a different story. Anyway, that's how I got started. That is how I got started. Is I showed it to Philadelphia and said, "Hey, I want to try it out."
Wow.
And they put me on a mic, and really I owe so much to the Philadelphia guys, and that whole crew. Steve, Ed, Mark, and Rob really for getting me started in any of this.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was going to kind of talk about as well. I wanted to transition like Philadelphia because I see that you not only worked Frag 10, you worked Frag 11, Frag 12, and then you kind of started in with your first season at ESEA Premier. So, I mean, obviously, I imagine those connections help because I see Bach on the broadcast as well. I see some, like, I believe Topical, who's also from Kentucky, so I've chatted with him a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, was those sort of connections from Frag the way you got started with the ESEA?
Yeah, yes and no. So okay. With my connection with Frag, I'd worked with Mark a couple of times. ESEA did the, I mean, about the Next Big Caster Challenge, right?
Yes.
That used to be a whole big thing. I don't think they're doing it anymore. But the Next Big Caster Challenge used to be this thing where you signed up and, a certain number of people made it through the first pool, and then a certain number of people were whittled down as finalists, and then there was a fan vote to figure out who won the thing.
Right. And
the first iteration of the Next Big Caster Challenge I applied for, and Mark rejected me. That son of a bitch. No. I legitimately, I wasn't that great. There was a lot that I could work on.
Yeah.
He gave me some really good feedback about it. And he also said, look, I know you, I know we've worked together. I can't play favorites with this. So I didn't get into that first Caster Challenge, which was frustrating at the time. That one was, I think Roy won it. Strong Legs won that Caster Challenge. And then transitioned into working for ESEA as opposed to just streaming things on his own channel.
Yeah.
So then that next year, that next go around, I did the Caster Challenge. And this time, I think that was the second Caster Challenge ever. Yeah. This time it wound up being myself, Magic Helmet, good old Mitch, and Insomnia as finalists. And then Insomnia wound up he dropped out of the thing. I think, I don't know. He's a guy. Do you know Insomnia? Were you around back then?
I've heard of his name before, for sure.
Okay.
I think it's probably like looking back at the Next Big Caster stuff though.
Yeah. He was another guy who was, one of the guys who was doing open events, streaming GoTV things and all this. But I think he's a plumber now. I think he got a trade job and is probably perfectly happy being a plumber. It's a good gig. Shitty days though. No, he was a nice guy, but he dropped out. So it wound up being just Mitch and I who went to Dallas for Global Challenge. And we're at the Global Challenge, and then we cast together a lot of that, and cast with other people as well, and worked the event, and then there was a vote, and I wound up winning. So I was the next big caster, and that got both of us into working for ESEA and doing broadcasts together. And I worked with Mitch for a year or two as co-casters. Love that dude. He does biz dev for Nerd Street now. is very happy on that end. But great guy, love. If you're watching this, love you. But yeah, that was where I started working with ESEA. So part of it was the connections in terms of like knowing people and knowing how to go about doing things, but I won the caster challenge.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into actually working with ESEA on a regular basis and doing the broadcasts and doing the online shows. And you were talking about Dallas, about Topical. Topical was also part of the ESEA broadcasts and doing that whole world as well. And doing the global challenges, and it was a great dude to work with early on and all that. Yeah, that was that whole crew. It was global challenges were a really good time. That first global challenge was awesome too, because it was I'm shaking my whole desk.
I did too earlier.
It's problematic. My desk is so wobbly now, and my camera is mounted to the desk now. So anytime I bump it, it's so obnoxious. I really need to fix this. But anyway, that first one, relegation, Pro League relegation was still attached to Global Challenge. So instead of it being just a 3-day event, it was a 5-day event. We were out in Dallas for a week working this. And like the teams that were there, this was right after Virtus Pro had broken up, the Legendary Core. And both versions of it were there. There was Virtus Pro, which at the time I think was Pasha, Neo, Bialy. I don't know if Snacks is still on the team. He might have been off the team at that point. I don't actually remember. And then a team that at the time was Kingwin has since gone through a lot of names and might be what is Honoris now. But it was Taz and his whole gang. So it was like, one of the first events, one of the first matches I did on LAN was like old Virtus Pro having been broken up, the rematch. And it was just this incredible moment where it's like, holy shit, I've been watching these guys for years now, and this is them, and I'm commenting their game. And that was a big moment. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, like, that was your first ESL broadcast as well, because I mean, technically I think it was like ESL relegation. It was under that name. So I mean, was that like a big deal for your career wise?
Yes, personally. I mean, no, it technically shows up as Pro League. No one thinks it's Pro League, right? It's not like I worked Pro League, but I know Mitch and I took a lot of photos with the Pro League branding up, we're like, yeah, hell yeah, we made it, baby. But I mean, that event in general was huge for my career.
Yeah.
Obviously I met a lot of people there, but also just that was the beginning of working like lands that weren't Nerd Street lands, right? Because I've been working some Nerd Street lands, and continued to do that, obviously. But Global Challenge really opened me up to doing a lot more stuff with ESEA and then with ESL and all that. So that was pretty damn cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we can kind of move forward here, and so I want to say, like, I think 2021 was a big year for you in terms of like breakout performances. You got to do a lot of like the bigger events, like you said, mentioned the Katowice or the championship or whatever they called it. So I mean, after like what I had imagined had to be a rough 2020 with Valorant coming out and the entrance into the online era, how was it kind of transitioning into 2021 and having like a great year and doing all of these big events?
I mean, it's been interesting, right? So talking about 2020, right, when COVID hit, it was bad. And that had already started as a bad year for me, because that was when Pro League shifted at the beginning of 2020, was from being an NA Pro League and an EU Pro League to being the one condensed Pro League with, I think it was 24 teams. And suddenly all of NA Pro League was dead. And that was a real blow, because like Mitch and I, Magic Helmet and I, were probably like next in line to do some NA Pro League stuff.
Right.
Like that would have been a theoretical, logical progression for where we were at in the career. So that was a real dick punch. And like just a lot of things happened, and that's when NICS started to die, and like all that went down. And obviously Valorant stuff was going on, and I was dabbling in Valorant, but the obvious path for how my career would have progressed within CS was vaporized, and that was rough, and work dried up in a big way. I know everyone thinks, well, the online era is huge for esports. So many people are watching esports. That's true. But it took people a long time to figure out how to actually run events. So there were a good 6 months there where it's like, please pay me money, please.
Yes.
And I'm enormously lucky in that when I went full time, which was in 2019, I had worked for a while before that and built up a huge nest egg because I knew that I thought because of my own incompetence, I wouldn't get gigs and would need a long time of savings to fall back on. Turned out it was a global pandemic, but these things happen. So I fortunately am enormously privileged in that I had savings and I had money to fall back on, and I did not, really go broke. But it wasn't good. It wasn't good. The nest egg shrunk a lot. But then coming into 2021, starting with Katowice, that was huge. We'd done some stuff, as I said before. We'd done like a little bit of the Pro League when there was the NA Online Pro League that they pivoted back to. We'd done a little bit of the Cologne. We'd done a little bit of the what was ESL New York Online. But that was all online broadcasts. And then Katowice, it was like you're doing the whole B stream, still online, but it's just big deal. And that was a huge one. And then the next big thing was Summit, where I did exactly 2 days of Summit, filling in for Fifth Line because he didn't, I guess, needed his Thursdays off. And it was awesome. That was a great event. That was working it with Richard Lewis, with Harry and Hugo, and joking and telling stories and bullshitting. And that was one of the most fun broadcasts I've ever done. It was legitimately like being at a comedy show for the entire day. Like that is one of the events that I've worked where it did not feel like work at any point of it. It was such a good time. So that was really cool. And obviously, got me connected with Harry and Hugo, who are guys I admired for a while. I'd actually chatted with them before because we brought Harry onto the first season of Mustache Masters. Hugo wound up doing this last season. So we were all aware of each other, but this was the first time we'd actually worked together. I actually suspect that Harry and Hugo probably recommended me to the Summit crew, and that's probably how I wound up getting those gigs.
Okay.
But it was an awesome gig. It was an awesome opportunity, and it was a lot of fun to work with those guys, even if I was only doing 2 days. But yeah, it was.
You were the host for that as well, right?
No. Richard was.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Richard was the host.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I was like the guest, basically.
Okay. So like for that event, you obviously got to work with like a lot of big names, like you mentioned, Harry and Hugo, and then Richard as well. Like, did that kind of give you a lot of like opportunity to grow with like the names on that broadcast? Because I imagine they have a lot of experience to give. I know it wasn't necessarily like I wouldn't say a real broadcast. It was like you had mentioned, a comedy show, and it was entertaining. But did you have any like points that you had learned from that broadcast?
Yes. One of the things is that I know at this point, hopefully at all points, people are generally aware of the fact that Richard is an absolute master at what he does. But talking to the guy, he is probably the most talented storyteller that I've ever met.
Okay.
Maybe certainly top 5. I know some really brilliant storytellers who aren't esports people.
Yeah.
But he's just he is it's obvious in his work. It's obvious for anyone who pays any attention to anything that he ever does. Very charismatic and very, very talented as a storyteller. And so there's a lot that I learned just from listening to the guy and watching the guy and absorbing it. And then later on, when I started doing hosting, I reached out to him for advice, and he gave advice because he's also very generous. Right. And so I really appreciated that. Did I learn at that? The thing is, I wasn't. The problem with doing online events as opposed to doing in-person events is when you do an in-person event,
you get to chat with the talent.
Yeah, you hang out. You hang out because that's who's there that
Right.
you do the event, and then afterwards you go get a beer or you go get dinner or whatever, and you're spending more time chatting and hanging out, and you can get advice if there's more experienced people, and you can do this and you can do that. It's much harder to do in the online era where it's like, okay, well, shows wrap. See you tomorrow, boys. Or
right.
See you, in my case, it was see you next week, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess we could also talk about IEM Fall, because that was when I really I had heard Richard mention on one of his streams that he had kind of given you advice. So that was for the most part what I wanted to really talk about too. Was like that first hosting role that you had really had on like a big stage. I'm sure it was like a massive transition for you as well, but you fit it in really nicely. And so I guess I want to talk about like the growth in that event individually because of whether it was support from Richard, like you mentioned, he had given you advice, or just like getting thrown into a position, being like the gift of the gab there. So did you feel like that was the big transition for you, or were you kind of comfortable in that role?
I love hosting. I
Okay.
really, really enjoy hosting, and I think it really lends itself to my natural pursuit. So the first time I really did a proper hosting gig was actually in 2019, which was that last global challenge before the pandemic. We were supposed to have Davey there as a host, but he had gotten sick, was running a fever, something like that. He couldn't cross the border, basically, from Canada, and he couldn't attend the event. So he bailed on the event last second due to a health issue. He was out. We didn't have time to get anybody else. So what wound up happening is I swapped into being the host. Boggs, who was hired to be an observer there, transitioned into being a caster, which was great for him because he had been in the next big caster challenge and had not won it, but he sort of like got to slide into it, which was awesome for him.
Sometimes that happens.
You got to be ready, man. You got to be ready for the opportunities in esports. That's how it happens. And then, so that's where I wound up hosting for the first time, and I actually really enjoyed it. And that was where we had, I think it was Vu and Wolfie, were there, and then Boggs and Mitch were the other casters. And we would, with those global challenges, what we did is one duo would be in the caster booth, the other duo would be on the couch with the host, and swap. And so I really enjoyed hosting at that. And that was working with a company called Waveform, who do great productions for a lot of different things. They're like an independent broadcast company that get hired on as contractors to run broadcasts. And so I was working with I think Warchamp Taylor was TDing that one. And so it was really fun to get that feedback of like, oh, I actually really enjoy this. I actually really like hosting, and talk with him about it, and work on the cues and that kind of thing. So that was my first real experience with it. I've also done a lot of hosting in terms of like podcasts over the years, interviews over the years, which I think are all pieces of hosting that all sort of go into it as you learn it. And like doing the game show stuff for Mythic Cup and that kind of stuff. It's like, it's all different elements of hosting. And then I got the DreamHack gig, which was hosting online, doing DreamHack. And then in that, like the same week that I was doing DreamHack, I found out I was doing IEM It's like, holy shit. Okay. So I'd sent Richard a message about, general advice about hosting. He got back to me. He sent me just like a 15-minute audio log that was like my own private podcast, basically talking about some of his thoughts and philosophies. It was really helpful information. Really cool stuff. So I really appreciate that. But also, I think the biggest thing at IEM Fall, one of the biggest transitions, was also to working in that studio for the first time. The ESL studio is this crazy giant green cube that you are in, where the only thing that's real is the desk and you and the headsets, and everything else is AR'd in. And they've got a lot of cool technology and boom cams and different cameras and things like that. And you're building up the show, and just transitioning to that was, I think, the biggest thing. Like the amount of preparation that goes into making the different screens that you're going to talk about, using like Trello to build up the run of shows beforehand, like things that you want to make points, your analysts want to make points, developing that. And for the first week when we were doing the CIS stuff, we had Tom Eric on as our technical director, who is a guy, his Twitter ad is, I think it's like TD something. I don't remember it, but he is a superstar. He's a rock star. He really is. Super grateful that we got to work with him. And that he was one of my first, in-person hosts or in-person directors, because he's the guy who is usually running the show on a lot of the really top tier ESL productions. And so I learned a lot very quickly from him. And in terms of, I was always bugging him. He was working long ass days making things work. And then afterwards I'd be like, all right, so tell me what I did wrong. Tell me how I can be better. Tell me this, tell me that, tell me. And he's like, you're fine. Just leave me alone. No, he actually did give me good advice. Right. Which I'm sure was a pain in the ass for him to like be functioning at that point in the day. But production people never get enough love for how little they get to sleep on show days. But I got a lot of feedback from him. Obviously, I was working with Hawka and Wolfie at that one, so I was always asking them for feedback as well. And in doing the DreamHack as well, I'd gotten a lot of good feedback. Talking to like Blair, talking to Vu, who'd done a few of those as well, who'd worked with different hosts. I was very hungry for feedback, so I was asking them, what am I doing here? What can I do better? And with those shows, especially with a DreamHack show, it's super quick pace. It's like bang, 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 get your point out, get done with the segment, move, because it's gonna move. It's gonna move. It's gonna move. And you're always trying to catch up on time because inevitably there's some technical delay with online stuff, and then something gets pushed, so you're trying to catch up, and then it's very much hurry up and wait, where sometimes you're trying to catch up on time, and then suddenly you find out the game's not actually ready to start when it's supposed to be, so now you need to draw things out. So that was interesting, and that was a good preamble and a good warm up to then getting into what we did with IDM Fall, which I love that shit. I loved it so much. It is, I think, very much my natural skill set, in terms of I really enjoy being a bit of a performer. And I think that is very much what you do on a desk in a way. And the host, coaxing out the points with the analyst, having the conversation with the analyst, the back and forth, being the relay point between production and your analysts and the show, and keeping everything running. I really enjoy that challenge in particular. So I'd been wanting to host since I'd done that little bit of it in 2019. And there just hadn't been in-person events, really. And hosting online is a different beast. So I'm really happy with how IEM Fall went. I thought that there's obviously a lot I can build on and get better at. And I have been thinking about it and reviewing and, trying to get better. But I thought that considering the circumstances, considering the jump in and what was going on, I thought we did a really damn good job. I thought obviously, Haka and Wolfie and Laz did a great job as analysts. I was really pleased with the show that we put on. And I think that we got a lot of really positive feedback as well. So very pleased with that show. The second week, I've also lavished praise on Tom Erica. Second week, we were working with Bartosz as our TD. He was also fantastic. It's tricky transitioning once you figured out a cadence, switching between directors, because everyone you're going to have a slightly different working relationship with and that kind of thing. But he came in and hit the ground running, and we did a really good show there too. So I was really pleased. There's challenges, as there are with any live production. There's things, the graphic that you call for doesn't come out, or a different graphic comes up, and you're adapting and figuring out on the fly. You need to delay a little bit more. You need to hurry up a little bit more, and that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it, and I hope to get more opportunities to work at hosting, because that is really, I think, something that I would like to continue to develop as a craft, and somewhere that I'd like to sort of focus my career if the opportunities are available. It's fun, man. I love that shit.
Yeah, I mean, that was the next question I was gonna ask you. I feel like the show just as like I was trying to go for it from all of the hosting that you've done on your talk shows, because you're answering questions as my script is ready, and I'm like, oh, you answered that, so I'm just jumping down the list. But yeah. I mean, perfect. I was going to ask you, like, was that kind of in your future, was potential hosting roles? But nice. I mean, I could tell you were like very comfortable in that role, like, naturally. So it's also it makes sense that you had a lot of history, and of course, like, once you do a show or like you do on Press Forward to Diffuse, you very easily can build up that skill set. So yeah, you did a great job, I thought.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the current ecosystem right now in 2022, so we can kind of look into the future as well. And I guess I wanted to start off with the new conference system. I've heard a lot of hype for the Global Challenge, and I think this is kind of a similar take on the Global Challenge, where you have a lot of the premier teams that get to compete internationally. We just saw the last outing. I think that Extra Salt, was it Movie Star Writers, and then I believe it was Godsent that made it through.
Yep.
In that, and so like 2 NA teams were able to make it through. I think a lot of people are excited about this new new ESL conference system, and I think that maybe it could rival Global Challenge if it does go on to LAN eventually. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's brilliant. I really like it. I think it's a vast improvement over the just 2014 Pro League. I think that the conference makes a lot of sense, because what you do is, instead of just having teams that qualify straight into EPL and then get shit stomped, like pretty much every NA team that we've sent there, Bad News Bears 0-5, Team 1 0-5. Like it's tough to make that jump from competing in NA to competing against the top 10 best teams in the world. Yeah, and there's a big jump. I think the conference creates a system where, instead of having, teams 15 to 10 to 1 in your bracket where you're going to have like a top 5 team in the world in your group.
Yeah.
Instead of that, you start out in the conference where there's still very good teams from around the world. It's still top tier competition, but instead of it being, teams ranked 1 to 15, it's teams ranked 15 to 30 kind of thing. And so there's a little bit more of a bridge period where you can have teams get used to competing for many of them is going to be their first international experience. I mean, you look at the teams that RBG just played in an EPL conference, right? Like they've never traveled.
Yeah.
The furthest they travel was Philadelphia for Philadelphia, right. I think. So that's a whole new experience. It creates an arena in which you can match up against teams that are in a similar developmental stage as you are in other regions, right? So instead of playing Astralis, you're playing Renegades.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Stamina's big note on it was that a lot of people think this gap between NA skill-wise and EU skill-wise and the Tier 2 region is so massive. And, it might be true. There might be something to it where there might be a little bit more developed because of the competition that they have available. But in reality, it's not too crazy wide. And I think the best example of that, I don't know how well you know him, but Wolfie over on Static. Yeah, so he switched over to Static not too long ago, and he's putting up great numbers consistently. And back when he was playing in Premier or MDL, I think at the time, he was probably a top 5 opper in MDL. I wouldn't consider him amazing, but
at times
he's doing good. I think he has like a 1.7 rating right now in a Static, and they're winning a lot of competitions that you wouldn't expect. I think they're in the FunSpark tournament coming up. So yeah, I think you and Stamina have the exact same take on it.
The thing about EU as opposed to NA is the availability of support is so much broader, right? And there's a few reasons why. One is just that CS is bigger in Europe right now, and the second huge one is that legalized sports betting is normal and frequent and common, and esports betting is normal and frequent and common. So a lot of these teams that aren't top-notch teams but are competing in your FunSpark Ultis and your Relog Media, whatever their latest tournament is called thing. The only reason they exist is because there's betting money that supports their organization.
Yeah.
And we don't have that in NA. We don't. We do not have that same level of money available. And what money there is available in the scene is mostly going into Valorant. So, the number of salary teams aren't big. The number of tournaments that you have aren't big. Your relogs don't exist here. We have like a Super League Ulti, whatever they're called, and then there was that Brazilian Flow Fire League that was happening. But those are mostly flash in the pans. It's hard to get consistency out of those. There's cash cups now. Cash cups have been huge. Bad News Bears would not have existed last year without cash cups. Party Astronauts would not exist without cash cups. Like, it's huge. The money that's going back into the ecosystem from those is what's keeping NA teams alive. But in Europe, if you're the 6th best Finnish team, you could get salaried. It might not be a lot, but you can get salaried. If you're the 10th best Danish team, someone might be looking at you because it's Denmark, even though there's nobody, like, it's a tiny population, right? There's like 5 salaried teams or whatever in Poland. Right. There's a lot of money available in a way that there just isn't. Part of it is that cost of living is lower. Paying a Polish team is way cheaper than paying an American team. But there's also just the reality that a lot more people can devote themselves fully to Counter-Strike as opposed to working a job or 2 jobs or going to school and doing this as a hobby on the side. And that just creates a different level of expectation and ability to compete. There's also the fact that if you're in Europe, you can compete against all those other countries online in scrims and things like that. Whereas in NA, the ecosystem is just smaller. There's only so many teams. Yes, I know we have as many people, but for the aforementioned reason, there are not that many teams that are that committed to Counter-Strike because they ain't no money. So for those reasons, the team atmosphere can be the gap can be widened, right? Individual skill, nah, man, we got headshotters for days. We got crazy individual skill on some of these players. But they've never had the opportunity to develop in a proper structure where they could actually commit to focusing on Counter-Strike as their primary pursuit. So for a lot of these teams that jump to international competition, you just need more time over. I mean, you look at what Extrasalt was doing, where every time they were getting a trip over to Europe, they were just practicing like crazy to try and improve and level up. And then they were bringing that back to the US. That's a thing. And the idea behind EPL Conference as well helps with that, because instead of going over, losing 5 games and being gone from your group and having been in Europe for a week, you go over, you compete in EPL Conference. If you make it through EPL Conference, now you're in EPL, you're playing all through Pro League as well. Suddenly you're there for several weeks. You can continue to practice and scrim and improve and get used to the level of competition and make a name for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Xner did in their EPL Conference. They I think they played a tournament right after they had finished, and then they were able to qualify for another tournament now that they're going back to Europe for. So yeah, Extrasalt's a great example of that promise. I kind of do want to finish off though with talking about Mustache Masters and how that all came to be, because I'm very intrigued by this topic. It popped up in 2019, I believe. You ran 3 events. So tell me about the formation of this.
So in 2018, I talked earlier about how, when I was younger, I went through a really rough period dealing with mental health, depression, anxiety, really full-blown crisis. And that's sort of when I found esports and developed esports. So the Movember Foundation's cause has always been really important to me. I think it's a great organization. I think it's a great charity that does a ton of good work, that is very transparent about where the money goes and how much money they convert over towards just raw donation funding and that kind of thing. I think it's an incredible organization. And in 2018, I did an individual campaign, just logging on, sending photos of my shitty mustache, trying to raise money on Facebook or whatever it was. I think I raised like $200 or something and matched it. And that year, I had the thought, hey, we could throw together a community tournament for this, and that'd be pretty cool. And I think I probably had that thought like at the end of October or beginning of November, when I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I talked to Chris Pluro about it, Chris Palick, and he was gung-ho about it. He had just left Nerd Street, and so we was working on something else, but he still had that esports connection and wanted to, work his skills in that in some capacity. And he was really interested in the cause as well. And we were both like, hell yeah, let's do this. So we reached out to ESEA and we started trying to have conversations. And basically what we realized is there was no fucking way we were doing this in 2 weeks. It was a great idea. Table it till next year. So then that next year we were living in a house with Ryan and with Griffin. Griffin, who does production, Ryan at Rushby Media, who does a whole lot of the social stuff. And we revisited the idea, and they were both enthusiastic about it as well. So they came on board, and we came up with the Mustache Masters, and we started working on that in end of August, September, something like that. Definitely still didn't give ourselves enough time to launch a whole new thing, but we came up with the brand. We came up with the this, that, and the other thing, the logo and designs and all this stuff, and we made the first tournament, and we really were not sure how well received it was going to be, right? Because it was like,
you never know.
This is a whole new thing. Some of us were optimistic. Some of us were pessimistic. I remember Ryan was very pessimistic about how much money we'd actually raise. He was not convinced that anyone would donate money, which is funny. So we put out our stretch goals in this whole thing. We set the target of 10 grand. I said if we got $10,000, I'd shave my head. And we raised $10,000. Holy shit. That event was amazing. It blew us all away. It exceeded all of our expectations. We raised over $10,000. I shaved my head for the first time. You can see the effects of the 3rd year of that right now. I'm at that stage of the grow out where my hair just looks terrible regardless. I hate it. At the end of the month, I will get a shape up cut and it'll look slightly less trash. But this is like when the duckling is molting kind of thing, and they just have those feathers like sticking out. It's just ugly. That's where I'm at in my hair growth. But that's how the Mustache Masters started. That was the first iteration, the 4 of us. And then the next year we did it again, and we raised over $25,000. In no small part thanks to a $10,000 donation from Nerd Street. That was huge.
Oh, wow.
And then this year we were like, all right, well, we're not going to get that 10 grand from Nerd Street. They still donated like $2,500, I think, like a lot of money. Majorly appreciate. But we weren't sure how we were going to do here, and we again broke our total, not by much. 27, I think, was what we hit, but we broke our total, which blew us away. So the fact that the communities come together year after year after year to support the event, to be a huge part of the event, to get excited and get excited to play, to compete, to donate, to watch, to meme on us, to Twitter out and send clown pictures and bald pictures all over the place. It's just really cool. It is, I think, the coolest thing I'm part of. And the fact that we can raise, tens of thousands of dollars for a cause that's really important to our community, and to all of us individually as well, is awesome. And I'm really, really, really proud of the work that we've done. And it is a lot of work. It's a fuckload of work.
Yeah. Oh no,
it really is. It is one of the most stressful things I do every year, but it's so worth it. And it is such a wonderful thing to be a part of. And when we go live, and when we get through that weekend of madness, it is really just such a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jackson asked me to ask this question personally for you, and he wanted to know how your second date went with your girlfriend after Mustache Masters.
I will tell this story. Okay, so my girlfriend, who has put up with me for over 2 years now, wonderful woman named Sarah. I had actually we had known each other before. She was a couple years below me in college, so we'd met, but at the time we're both dating other people. Like, didn't really know each other, met each other in passing, kind of thing. And that year, 2019, I had decided to go back to my old school for homecoming, which is always kind of a weird decision because I dropped out of that school. So I don't exactly have the warmest, fuzziest feelings about that school. But I do love my friends. I was part of a fraternity. I went back to that house. I love the people there. And she was also very close with people in the fraternity who are a couple years younger than me. Was a huge part of that. And so she decided to come back because she was living and working in Philly. And we met and chatted and hit things off, and had arranged to, we were going to grab drinks. And we grabbed drinks. And that first date, which she swears she didn't intend to be a date, but it was a date.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, familiar with that. She's like, yeah, I totally wasn't hitting on you. Yeah, she was. Anyway, that first date I showed up with a mustache, a shitty mustache, by the way. My mustache has never been good, but it was worse 2 years ago.
Right.
It's never been good. Worse 2 years ago. And I said, and she's like, why do you have the mustache? And I told her the whole story, and that's the whole thing. And I said, we're going to be doing this event. And like, if we raise $10,000, I'm shaving my head. And if we raise X amount of dollars, my hair's going blue and my mustache is going blue and all this stuff. And she was like, hell yeah. She had actually shaved her head in high school to raise funds for cancer research. So she's very into the idea. She's like, this is super cool, so on and so forth. So we had a great first date. Our second date was after the Mustache Masters. And so the Sunday of the Mustache Masters, she sent me a text and said, are you bald with a blue mustache yet? Or are you bald yet? And I said, not yet. She said, is your mustache blue? And I said, yes. And then I became bald later that night. And I showed up to our second date, shaved head. First time I'd ever shaved my head in my life, with a blue mustache. And she still thought I was cute, and she kept dating me. So her mistake.
There you go. Sounds like a keeper.
Her blunder. Major keeper. She's amazing. I'm very, very, very lucky that she continues to put up with me. But yeah, she's last year with the shaving of the eyebrows, she was a little perturbed. That was pushing it. I was pushing it far.
You have to raise the goal for that next year, huh?
It was $75K this year.
Oh, okay. I thought it was there again, and I wasn't sure like if you made it.
So not. 2 years ago, that was the 25 number.
Okay, and you all broke that thanks to Nerd
and
Street.
We broke that. Lost my eyebrows. This year it was like, okay, $75K. It has to be a number that's so ridiculous that if we break it, I'll just be like, whatever.
It's worth it.
Take my eyebrows
for sure.
Especially now that I'm like working ESL events.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Those don't come back super quick. They take 8 weeks to come back, and it takes longer for them to look normal. Wow. It's really weird when you don't have them. It's an adjustment
for sure. For the thumbnail of you without eyebrows.
Oh God. That's the thing. So at this point, because I've shaved my head 3 years in a row, when I look at myself in the mirror after I've shaved my head, I'm like, oh, okay, we're back to this. The first year it was very shocking. The eyebrows, still shocking. See yourself without eyebrows, you're like, what did I do?
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. All right, I mean, I am all good on questions. Is there anything you want to shout out before we head out?
Is there anything that I want to shout out? If you enjoyed this chat, follow me on Twitter. If you don't already, you can see my Twitter down below my face. It's @DarfMike. I'm @DarfMike on pretty much every platform except Instagram, because apparently someone took that. But I also don't post anything on Instagram, so don't follow me there. I do some podcasts. Sometimes I do the Premier Power Hour on Monday nights on ESEA. That's a little inconsistent right now. maybe we'll be better about that. I probably won't. Maybe I'll be better about it. I do press forward to Diffuse if you like Valorant stuff. That's every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on the Nerd Street Gamers channel, which is just Nerd Street now. They keep changing that URL on me to throw me off. But that's a good podcast. So check that out and keep an eye out for talent announcements. Maybe something fun will happen.
There we go. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for hopping on. This has been another episode of Xner's Fireside Chats. We'll be back soon. Thank you all. Peace.